Okay, you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay. Hi Meredith.
Hi Rob.
Oh dear. It's hi everyone. We're here to talk about the third assignment in written communication, and this is the essay portfolio. So this is due in week 8. It's worth 30% of your mark. It's 1,000 words long. And in this assignment, what you're required to do is to create an essay portfolio, which is a combination of an essay plan and an annotated bibliography. Did you want to say anything about that, Meredith?
I just said it's a great task in preparation for the essay. I think it'll be a lovely step through to the essay.
What you'll notice is that in the end information guide, you can again choose there's 6 questions that you can choose from. They're related to the article that you've already looked at in assignment 2. However, you can also decide to choose a totally different reading if you want to use a different reading. So you might have found that the reading that you chose for assignment 2 is good for doing a critical evaluation, but when it comes to the essay question you want to choose a different reading, and that's fine. The only thing is, once you've done this plan, then you have to stick with it for assignment 4. The questions are there in front of you and in the unit information guide. I won't go through them in detail, other than to say that you'll see some are just straight questions which you answer. Others have a quote which gives some context for the question. So there's a connection between the quote and the question that gives you some extra guidance. And you'll see that some questions don't really look like a question. They'll just have a word like discuss. And that's a code word of sorts, isn't it? What sort of code word is this?
It's one of those instructional words, as calls them. So discuss, critically analyse. Those code words that we use at uni, and discuss means pick out the key elements and the for and against. So it's one of those code words that's telling you to do something in the assignment.
Right.
It's not compare and contrast, it's pick out the key elements and for and against. And so that little code word is telling students what they need to do.
But this essay that you're going to plan and write is an argumentative essay. So while you sort of pick the for and against, you're going to come down one side or the other and have a definite stand, take a stand on the actual thing.
Yes.
The structure of this assignment is that, as I said, is that the first part of the assignment is a plan. It's going to have a thesis statement. That is the main argument that sets the argument for the entire essay, just in a sentence. So in this essay, I will argue, for example, you could imagine ... in answer to the question. And 4 to 6 supporting points, that is some claims which support that argument, that help you, if you like, you join the dots to say, this is why I think this argument is right. So that's going to be 200 words in your portfolio, and then you've got 800 words for an annotated bibliography. And what this is you're going to go and find 4 sources that give you some information for constructing your essay. We prescribe what those 4 sources are. The marking criteria are set out before you there. There's 5 marking criteria. You've got 30% in this essay, so you could imagine that each one's going to be worth 6 marks. We're going to evaluate your ability to develop the essay plan. That's the first part of the essay. Your ability to search and retrieve sources, how well you can evaluate those sources as evidence in your plan and as evidence for your essay, the quality of your engagement in creating this portfolio. And so that's the degree to which you've been able to integrate both the plan and the sources that you've found, and really connect those two to show that you've worked through a number of cycles of constructing your essay and seeing how well those sources fit with your essay plan. And finally, some standard things on presentation of the assignment, which you'll be pretty familiar with by now. So, onto the annotated bibliography. We specify what you need to find for this annotated bibliography. you need to find a book or an e-book, and that can include a chapter from a book. It doesn't have to be the whole book. You need to find one article from a peer-reviewed or scholarly journal. This is a particular type of journal that academics write for. It is a journal, in effect, where an academic or a scholar has written an article and it's been marked by peers and said, yep, this is okay or not, or this needs some correction, and so it's gone through a process of peer review. So you need to find an article from a journal like that, and if you go to the Writing LibGuide, and on the Journals tab there's some instructions for how to find peer-reviewed journal articles, as well as a short video on how to decide whether something's peer-reviewed or not. And then a web-based source, which is very open. That can be anything that you can find on the internet, so it's pretty broad. And then you need to find one more source, and it can be any of the above types of sources. In helping you through this, as I mentioned, there's a writing subject guide that has a lot of information on finding sources in the library, books and journal articles and web-based sources. We've got an Ask a Librarian forum on MySCU for you. And so you'll have 4 sources for this particular assignment. Of course, when it comes to your essay, you'll have more than 4. The annotated bibliography, what this is there's basically, and also online we've got an example of a complete portfolio that you can use as well. So you can get a sense of what an annotated bibliography looks like, but basically it's got a reference as if it was in a list of references at the end of an essay, and then underneath it there's a paragraph that summarises the article. And what we've asked for is for you to summarise it in a specific way, that is to identify the topic or the subject of the source, so you could think back to assignment 2. What is the issue or question that's being answered here? An assessment of its credibility. That is, is this a good source, not such a good source? If it's not a good source, then I might think, well, why are you including it in this assignment? That could get back to that marking criterion on quality of engagement. So it's an assessment of the credibility of the source, a critical summary of the main arguments and supporting points, and then an explanation of how useful this is going to be, how this is going to be useful for your essay. So this is sort of the rationale for why you're including this particular source in your bibliography. Anything to add there?
Just that when you're thinking about writing your annotation, it's a snapshot, as Rob said, but you've moved from the most general thing you can say about the source to the most specific thing you can say about it. So you start with its topic, and as Rob was moving through those points, you move to the most specific thing, which is how you can use it as a resource to back up your argument. And so having that kind of inverted pyramid idea might just help you shape each annotation.
Yeah, no, that's good. Other considerations you could include in an annotated bibliography, we're not specifying you do this necessarily, but you could, for example, consider who the author is and their credibility. So this could help you in that credibility argument. When you're establishing the credibility of the source, is the source up to date? That might be important for your particular essay question, especially if it relates to the internet. If you've got something from 1995, before there was anything like Facebook or Twitter or YouTube, then your argument, it's a source that may not be as useful as some of the some later sources. Who's the audience for the source? Is this a scholarly audience? Is it not? Again, this might help you establish the credibility of the source. What type of evidence is used in the source, that is in terms of its content, and we've already talked about the evaluation, that is evaluating how useful it is to you, but it might be there's a few extra points there that you can consider.
I think annotated bibliographies are so popular as assignments because we think, ideally, that you do something like an annotated bibliography for yourself every time you write an assignment. That is, you'll take notes about the sources that you're thinking of using. You'll think about how those sources can help you write a report or write an essay, but you'll embrace this practice in some way and make it your own. So you generate a rough annotated bibliography as part of your assignment process.
Yeah, even if it's not a formal annotation, in a way this is the type of information that you would be gathering. And of course, I guess one of the important pieces of information that you would always gather is the actual source itself and the bibliographic details that you need for your list of references. And as you take notes, think about page numbers so that when it comes to writing an essay, you've got your page numbers there and don't have to go back to that source later on to find out which page was this on and all that tedious.
Just cut through all the stress.
Very tedious later on. Meredith, do you have anything more to add?
Just about planning.
Okay.
Planning the assignments, just the how you're going to go about this. And there's many different ways of going about it. One way of going about it is that you might start off by reflecting upon and reviewing your assignment 2. So you go back to the article that's relevant to the assignment question. Your head's probably somewhere else by now. You're doing other units, you've submitted other assignments, so just take some time, 20 minutes, to go back through what you submitted for assignment 2, which was your critical evaluation of the article. It's probably a good idea then to read through the article, because you might have changed your mind in a second or third reading later on about your answers to those questions now. Often we see articles quite differently 2, 3, 4 weeks later.
And we're reading for a different purpose, because there's a question as well.
Beautiful. Yep. Yeah. And so that little time of regrouping and getting your head back into the article can be the most useful time leading into this assignment. So you're not just relying on memory, you've gone back and spent some time with the article and your assignment 2. Then you're likely to go through taking notes for the articles or sources that you're using for your annotations. And as you're taking your notes, highlighting is a minimum, but what you can end up with is, well, I do, in a new field, I'll end up with most of the text highlighted, which isn't that useful to me. I think everything's useful. And so you know what you need to gather when you're taking your notes. It's the elements for each annotation. You need to take notes so that you can answer those elements for the annotated bibliography. So that's what I take my notes with. As I'm going down the side of the page, I make sure I've got that for each of those 4 sources.
Oh yeah, that's good, yeah.
So I'm reading with a purpose and I'm grabbing that information. So I've got the little bullet points for my annotations for each source as I take my notes. So then I've familiarised myself with the article, I've got my notes for my annotated bibliography. I haven't started writing anything yet. I'm still thinking, and I know I've got to generate a point form plan for my essay, and so this is where it can get quite cyclical, that to generate that point form plan you probably need to keep toggling between the article that you're using and those sources that you've used for your annotated bibliography until you can brainstorm your answer to the question. And I've presented that in a very linear, orderly way, but there'd be other ways of doing it.
That this is a thinking assignment. There's a lot of thinking that's going on in this assignment, and you put in the thinking here, writing the essay is going to be quite straightforward. The other thing I was thinking about was that we talked about how assignment 2, that reading in assignment 2 was part of a conversation. And in a way, what you're doing when you're finding sources for your annotated bibliography is some more points in the conversation, so that you're getting more voices into this conversation and answering the question in relation to those voices.
Such a great point. I think that's why this can be tricky at this moment too, because you really are forced to put that article into its conversation and you're taking into account when you're doing your annotations. But that's the interesting bit of this assignment too. I imagine getting to understand that debate and where you're located in it.
And how you answer this question. So when it comes back to it, it's always about the question, isn't it, as well?
Always.
Am I answering the question or not? Does this source help me answer the question or not? And that's sort of really the touchstone that's going to guide you through this, is always come back to the question.
Yes.
Beautiful. Okay, that sounds like a wrap. Thanks, Meredith.